I love the DC comic Poison Ivy, Life and Death.
Okay.
I, I'm like very into botanical stuff and queer stuff, and I also run an aerial circus company. And Poison Ivy has like such a ripe opportunity for aerial because of the vines. So anyway, I don't want to talk about that too much because then someone else is going to do it. No one's done it yet.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another one of CONVOS. Today, joining us is a very special guest, director, writer, Zoë Eisenberg. Thank you for joining us and taking time out to talk with us.
Hey, Dario. Thanks for having me.
First of all, congrats on your debut feature-length film, Chaperone, which we got to check out. And how's it feel to have people finally kind of watch it and get their eyes on it?
Feels great. We just had our Hawaii premiere, which is our hometown premiere. So feeling pretty good.
Yes, and you did the Hawaii International Film Festival, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that just happened a couple of weeks ago. Last week.
And how'd that go? What was the response? Was it kind of everything you were hoping for?
Yeah, it was really warm. You know, it's always nice to, especially when we premiered this in January in Utah. So it's nice to have gone already a whole festival season and then get to see how people react to it at home.
Okay. And first, I kind of want to go back a little bit and like discuss how did you first kind of get your start in film?
Yeah. So I'm a fiction writer primarily. And I like to say I fell in love with film when I fell in love with a filmmaker. My now husband, then boyfriend is a filmmaker and wanted a script. And I was like just, very in love, newly in love, and was like, well, I'm a writer, so I can figure out how to write you a script. And from there, I became completely addicted. He doesn't really make films anymore, and I joke that he like passed it on to me,
took over.
Yeah. And so we made a couple films together. I was writing and then I was producing out of necessity just to get our projects made. Then I started producing work for friends and eventually directing.
Okay, that's awesome. Just kind of helping somebody out and then kind of like falling into yourself. So what were some like the films that influenced you or directors that influenced you the most, like coming up?
Oh man, that's such a hard question. But I do know the first time I realized that women make movies was when I watched Sofia Coppola's The Virgin Suicides. I had loved that book as a teenager and was excited to see it. And I just didn't know much about filmmakers. I watched movies, but I didn't really understand the director's voice. And within a few frames of that film in the beginning, just light bulb went off in my head. That was like, oh, a woman made this.
Yeah, that was a very big one for a lot of people that people like really gravitate towards, and then obviously like kind of put her on the map as well. So what are you from Hawaii or like what kind of?
I'm from the East Coast originally. My grandparents were military and they retired out in Hawaii when I was a kid. So I would visit with my mom. And then one by one, like basically everyone on my maternal side of the family would visit someone here and then not go back. They'd be like, this is better. I don't know. So I did that after college. So I've been living here since 2012. My mom's here now too.
Okay, that's cool. I'm a military kid too. Like, were you Navy, Air Force?
It was my grandparents, so it wasn't me at all. It was just them. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So since you've been in Hawaii kind of like a decent amount of time now, what is the scene like in Hawaii in terms of like the film industry or like filmmakers and up and coming film come through there?
Yeah, the film scene is really strong here. We've had a lot of breakout success with different filmmakers in the last couple of years. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think part of it is we have a really great film school here now, so that kids, coming up in Hawaii can go to college here and study film. And then, all those kids that have been doing that are now, in the workforce. And then also during the pandemic, the industry changed, a lot of it for the worse. But meetings became normalized to do through Zoom. And when that happened, a lot of, our creatives who felt like they needed to move to New York or LA in order to get work got to move back home. So we have kind of like this really strong boomerang effect of all of these mid-level creatives who are coming home now and telling stories here.
Okay, that's really cool. Like that's obviously unexpected. And then like results from obviously something that people didn't want, which is the pandemic, but like you get these cool movements popping up from it.
Yeah. And the really cool thing about making films here is that, I mean, the community is small, but it's really close knit and it's really supportive. There isn't much competition between the creatives. You know, sometimes we're all vying for the same funding kind of thing.
Yeah.
Everyone has such a unique voice that, like, a film that I made is nothing like a film that, you know, Alika Tengen made or that Kiara Lacey made. So they're really, it's just so nice to see everyone have their own lane and everyone just be cheering each other on.
That's awesome. So obviously debut, Chaperone. How did we get here? What was kind of the process? What was the like imperative to put this story out, and like what made you want to write this one?
The idea generation first came when a high school kid mistook me for a teenager and asked me out to a house party. And I was 30, just about to turn 30. I was married and I was like, I'm old, bro. Like, and we just both laughed about it and went our separate ways. But then afterwards I was like, what kind of woman, you know, would have thought that this was a good idea? Why would she have thought this was a good idea? What would her life have to look like for her to think this was the best choice in front of her? Okay,
so this is like a real example of kind of art imitating life. Like this is as close to home as possible.
A seed. I mean, this was like a 4-minute interaction I had in the gym in 2018, and now we're here, you know?
Yeah. But obviously, like it sparked, you know, this whole journey that you're on now. And like, I'm sure when you look back at that moment, you like when you were in the moment, you didn't think like, oh, I can get a movie out of this, you know?
I just became like really obsessed with the question, and most of my ideas, whether it turns into fiction or film, becomes with some kind of question or situation I just can't stop fixating on.
All right. So how long did it take you to write this and like get it to a complete kind of state?
I wrote the first draft in just a few months, which is pretty typical for me. And then I spent 4 years developing it and trying to finance it, which is also pretty typical.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. The production part is always kind of ours, getting across that finish line, getting made. And during that time, I was rewriting the script constantly. So the shooting script is nothing like the first draft, but the first draft happened pretty quickly, and then I could send it out, you know, to people and ask what they thought. Okay. And I mean, you don't typically see like in film the age dynamic. I mean, you do see it in film and kind of culture, like the age dynamic, but it's typically it's between like an older guy and a younger woman or girl, and it's kind of flipped on its head here, and like roles are reversed. Is that something that you were kind of conscious of when you were like writing this?
It was definitely something I was conscious of. Early inspiration for the film. I thought a lot about The Graduate, both the book and the film, and I was kind of like, for me, reading and watching, I always thought Mrs. Robinson was way more interesting than Benjamin Braddock. And I was like, you know, what would the story have been like from her perspective? And so I ended up moving pretty far from that idea. But early on, my producer, Allison, and I would be like, it's sort of like The Graduate, told from, you know, the perspective of a very different Mrs. Robinson. But the themes of that are all still there because it's playing with, you know, the idea of rejecting social norms, ambition, pressure put on us by our parents and peers. So a lot of like those like foundational seeds are still there. Yeah. I mean, not you mentioned The Graduate, like I can definitely see where kind of like those influences could kind of pop up in a film like this, which I didn't like necessarily connect at first, but now you said I can definitely see it. Well, we're also having a renaissance of the age gap drama right now. When I was pitching this, the age gap drama wasn't a thing. I didn't have a shorthand to be like, oh, it's an age gap drama, oh, it's a horror film, or it's this or that. I had to like mumble through the log line, you know, to get people to understand. And now we have Licorice Pizza and Baby Girl and May December and so many others all coming out within the same like 2-year period. It's wild. Right. That is funny that I did just watch the Baby Girl trailer and I was like, oh, that did come out. And then they just have the one with, was it Martin Short or Jenna? I was forgetting her name, but the one that played Wednesday Addams. Oh, shit. Did we? I know that there's also a Jennifer Lawrence one that's more of like a high comedy concept where she gets hired to like. Yeah, that was one too. Yeah. You have a nerdy kid. Yeah. And none of those existed at the time when I was writing, but I must have been writing at the same time as all of those people because of how long it takes to get a film made. So it's kind of wild. Yeah, that is something that now just think about it. Like, yeah, that is something that's kind of going on right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, it also makes you think of like,
the one film that really stuck with me about like that kind of age gap thing was like American Beauty back in the day. I don't know, like obviously that's
Yes.
a big one for a lot of people.
Yep. Diary of a Teenage Girl was
Yeah.
also one. Yeah. So they have always existed, but not all released at once like this.
Yeah, you typically like get them like every now and then.
Yeah. Right.
Um, Kind of open up with this tagline called "This is not a love story." Like at least that's what I've seen in the press. So like, what kind of story is this? How do you want to like people to kind of take from this or resonate with this? And what kind of like, I don't know, meaning or message maybe you're trying to like kind of portray in the film as a whole?
Yeah. That's a big question.
Yeah.
It's a cautionary tale for me, not necessarily only because of the choices that our protagonist makes and what happens as a result, but also moving all the way back to, you know, the genesis of those choices is the isolation she was feeling based on all the pressure being put on her. The tagline is definitely because some people in script stage and a few in feature form would be like, but this is a love story. So at the end, this has to happen. And I would be, this is not a love. Even joked about like titling it that at one point, just to be like, let's just get this out of the way. And most people get that, but every now and then they don't.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, like, obviously, like walking that line of like that age gap is very tricky, and like you don't want to romanticize obviously certain aspects of it, but it is still a part of like the characters and what they're going through.
And I'm not saying there's no romance in the story. There is a romance like leading the whole spine of the narrative, but overall, it's not a rom-com.
Yeah, definitely not a rom-com. Definitely not a rom-com. I mean, speaking about it, like you do like this incredible way in the film of like capturing that sense of unease and almost shame that is like coming and like something's about to happen. You just kind of like anticipating it, but also kind of dreading at the same time. Like, how did you manage to like get that, build up that tension to the point where like when it hit, it was like, oh, okay, like we knew this was coming.
That is, I think, a trifecta of things. Really great performances, especially from our lead, Mitzi. So even when we're just watching her alone, we're feeling what she's feeling. And that's just a testament to her talent. Also, the music by Taimani Gardner, it adds a really tense feeling. And then my editor, people do not give editors enough credit, but my editor, Kale Kasashima, is a master of tension. He's an assistant editor for Blumhouse, so he works in horror a lot. When you take that skill set and you put it into a situation like this, like the film would not be what it is without him making sure that the tension is top of mind.
That's funny you said that because literally, like when that moment happens, I'm not going to, spoil the moment, but there's especially like one moment that happens where you're like, oh, like kind of like, oh, this is going downhill now and like really, really fast, where you almost feel like, is this a horror movie we're watching? Like at the end of the day, like, is this really like a horror movie that's turning into a horror movie? Like there's definitely a shift in the film. Yeah,
and we have a very active Letterboxd account, which I love. I love to go on there and read what people write. But we do have people on there like joking that it's a horror movie for sure.
Okay, I'm glad I picked up on it because I was definitely like, oh, we're going bad really fast.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted like obviously horror films typically do.
I wanted the second half to feel almost like a Safdie Brothers film. Like I love them so much, but I'll never watch one of their films more than once because it feels like you're getting kicked in the stomach.
Yeah.
Very effective, but not, I don't want to watch it again.
Yeah. The hits kept coming in this one, especially towards the end. And like, it's like, is this ever going to like end for her or like, how is this going to end? You've definitely like left a lot of questions, like as you're leading up to that like climax point.
Mm-hmm.
So how, like the ending, how'd you decide on the ending? Obviously, without spoiling things, like what was kind of like your thoughts about that and kind of the process?
Yeah, for me, it's always been a tragedy. And I mean that in like the narrative structure of it, not a comedy, but a tragedy. So that was sort of always the ending that I wanted in mind. And again, without giving too much away. But a tragedy is just like, does the character change or do they not change? And that's, comedy versus tragedy. So that was always sort of what I was going for. Although when I was taking feedback, especially before we shot, there was a push from some people to give it an ending that felt more tied up and closed. So we actually ended up shooting one. And then because, we had director's cut, I just cut it out.
Were you able to kind of test those two different endings with
Yeah,
people?
we did. We tested those two, and a lot of people they did like the more tied up ending, but I really think it would have given people, I mean, one, it wasn't what I was trying to say. So there was that. And for me, that's the end of the day. But it also, I don't think it would have given people as much to talk about because when, we've been doing a festival tour since January and everyone in our Q&A wants to talk about the ending. And I think if we had gone with that other ending, they'd be like, okay, cool. That was, yeah, all right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that's overlooked in a lot of films is that they do want to have like that happy ending, everything kind of works out. But honestly, like the endings that get talked about the most are the ones that are like kind of controversial and like not like
surprise you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sopranos is being talked about what, like 30 something years later, like, and like there's whole documentaries about it. So it's like, I think that was a very interesting choice on your part.
Thanks.
And obviously being shot in Hawaii, you also had an all Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Island cast.
Pretty much all of our lead cast for sure.
Okay. And like, was this like a conscious choice and like a decision that you were going, like specifically trying to make?
I mean, it was a choice to try to be sure that we're reflecting the community here. And the community here is like 70% Asian, mixed Asian, Hawaiian, Hapa Hawaiian, right? So it makes sense that a film set here, the cast should reflect that as well.
Okay. That's very cool. And I guess was the response been like around, Hawaii and like the local scene there and like people who have seen it from there?
Yeah, it's been really good. I mean, it's a different kind of story than we've gotten here. Yeah, at least from a female perspective in that, yes, it's very Hawaii. If you live here, like you said, the cast reflects people who live here. But I do think I could have set the story in any small town and made sure that the casting reflected that small town, but the story really wouldn't have changed. And a lot of the stories here, some of them are really important. They're about, Hawaiian culture, or others come in and they use Hawaii as a backdrop, as like an exotic location. And we didn't really do either of that with this film.
Okay. And I mean, speaking about film and like the industry, like, what do you think about like the current state of the film industry and like the direction it's headed in? Because obviously, like, there were a lot of big changes with the strike and with everything else that's going on, like, and obviously movie upheaval and like theaters. Like, what do you kind of think about the current state?
I'm trying to stay hopeful. I've always thought at least with like the way streaming is going, as I watched all these platforms kind of pop up and even myself have all these subscriptions now. I'm like, there's no way that this is going to last without some kind of implosion and all of them sort of eating one another. And we had like a bloated content thing happen. And now I think we unfortunately are going to have to go the other way because they're so expensive to make and we don't know how to sell them anymore. And it's like one of the only industries where you make a product and you don't know how you're going to sell it.
Yeah, it's very interesting kind of crossroads that they're in. Like they kind of went from creating trends to just chasing them. And like, it's kind of like kind of started to bite them in the back but a little bit.
I love how we're like them.
Yeah. I mean, the major studios, I think everybody knows who's really in control. Yeah. Like they're the ones splitting up all the streaming. They're the ones creating all these different platforms that you have to go to watch one property. And like, they're the ones like putting out 4, 5, 6 movies a week that are like, they're here and then they're gone,
Yeah. And it's so funny because I'm so indie, right? Everything I've done has been so indie that I've never really been part of the bigger studio system. I mean, I produced one short film that was a Netflix Tribeca short, but other than that, everything has been hyper indie. So it's been interesting to me to watch my friends who were lucky enough to be at a place in their career where they're, being properly paid for their contribution by some of these studios. And then the strike happened and they're like, they're like, all right, indie. I hear indie's the way to be.
I mean, I honestly feel like any film is putting up the most talk-worthy, mention-worthy, like memorable properties out there today. Like they're the ones actually bringing in the money because the budget is obviously much shorter and like there's actually an artistic vision behind it instead of just making money. Yeah,
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So do you have like you say like you had unlimited budget, studio came to you, make your one dream project. You have a dream project that you would want to make?
Oh, man. I mean, I have stuff that I've written myself, but if someone was trying to bring me on to do like IP, I love the DC comic Poison Ivy, Life and Death.
Okay.
I'm like very into botanical stuff and queer stuff. And I also run an aerial circus company, and Poison Ivy has like such a ripe opportunity for aerial because of the vines. So anyway, I don't want to talk about that too much because then someone else is going to do it. No one's done it yet.
I mean, that'd be super dope because I don't think we've ever gotten a Poison Ivy properly on film or anything.
We had Poison Ivy, but she was just like the manic pixie dream girl to Batman, even though it was called Poison Ivy. So no, and also like Poison Ivy is so gay. Like Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn is so gay. And now we have like we have one animated series that like kind of shows it, but you know, we need more of that.
Yeah, that'd be dope. I mean, I only remember Poison Ivy from, what was it, the 92 Batman film or something like that? That was very like...
Yeah, I don't know if you like comics, but you should check this graphic novel out because there's just like scenes of her and Harley Quinn having like these lovers spats of like, why are you talking to that person? Why are you talking to her? And like, just like jealous. I'm like, you guys are so gay. And like everyone's saying it, but not saying it.
I mean, I do love comics. I do think that would be an interesting dynamic because obviously like Catwoman, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, like, especially like from Batman's world, he has a lot of interesting like female characters in there. And
the whole premise of that one, the whole premise of that one is she's like figured out how to, you know, because she's a scientist, right? She's figured out how to have her plants like have children. So she has these like hybrid plant babies that she's like fostering, and there's like really intense like vaginal plant birth in it. Like it just like, you know, I would like to,
bring really intense vaginal plant birth to film. Okay. Yeah,
we need it, right? I mean, we saw The Substance. If that could happen, then this can happen, I believe.
I mean, it can't be worse than Birds of Prey, that's for sure.
Yeah, there we go. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so do you have let's say a favorite film from this year as the kind of year's kind of wrapping up and like award season's coming around? Is there one film that you would point to and be like, that's my favorite from this year?
Oh man, that's such a hard question. I don't know. I mean,
okay, you could do like 3.
Let me think. I mean, I just saw The Substance and I just mentioned it so we can talk about that. That was really wild and I love body horror. So I will say that one. And I heard they like ran the analytics and like, whatever, it doesn't matter. Substance, so good. Substance. I really liked Yorgos Lanthimos' Kinds of Kindness. I know that not everyone did, but I'm a big fan of his. Yeah, I see you like,
it was interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. I really loved like 2 of the 3 triptychs. And I could kind of like imagine his brain work. I'm just making this up, but I can imagine him being like, I have these 3 ideas and like, maybe I'll just put them together. And I love the idea of, it's almost like traveling theater of just doing different stories with the same crew. I really liked that a lot.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think. I don't know. This is a hard question.
I mean, 2 was good. There you go. Kinds of Kindness and The Substance.
Yep.
I mean, Yorgos is obviously very interesting director. So like I go into his films just like, all right, let's just see what happens.
Have you seen Dogtooth, which was one of like his earliest?
I've seen Dogtooth, yes.
I bought that for my husband when we were just barely dating, and I went into this like indie movie store in Brooklyn, and I was like, I'm dating this filmmaker and I want to impress him. It's his birthday. What should I get? And they were like, you should get this film Dogtooth. And we watched it and I was like, I'm so sorry, babe. Like I don't know. Because I didn't understand his humor yet, you know?
I mean,
I didn't get Yorgos. Yeah, it was just
around. So
yeah, exactly. I'm talking about it, 15 years later. So
yeah, that is very interesting movie. One other question. Did you see Megalopolis?
No.
Would you?
Yeah, sure. I would. I have a problem with movies over 2 hours. I get, I see them, but I'm just like, why guys, make a limited series. So
yeah. I mean, it's definitely a long one. It's definitely a long, say journey. We'll just say journey. It's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting journey. I think everybody should see at least once. Just one of those.
I think I should see it. All right. Okay.
Okay. So Hawaii Film Festival. What's the future? What about distribution? Where can people watch this? Like, what's your plans? What's next? What movie are you working on?
Yeah. Where can they watch this? Good question. We are still looking for distribution. We are talking to folks, but haven't settled on anyone. So I'm hoping it'll come out to general public next year. We are playing a few more festivals. We're about to play in Philly at the Philly Asian Film Festival. We're playing Whistler in Canada at the end of the year. A couple other in between. But we're on Instagram, so folks can follow us Chaperone Film Hawaii.
Okay. And we'll put all those links up down below for everybody watching this, listening to this, wherever, and like definitely go check out the film. It's a great film. Definitely was like an amazing turn towards the end. And I think it was like a great overall just production. And like I was very impressed.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking time out with us, talk with us, and maybe we'll check in with you again later.
Great. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.